Keith Abraham. It's an absolute pleasure to actually have you on the Gift podcast. Welcome.
Thanks, Troy. Oh, it's wonderful to be here. You know, you're doing some fabulous things with your podcast, and you're so right around the name of it being the gift. And I know you talk about this a lot, and, you know, everyone has a gift. It's just that we just often don't recognise it.
Well, I mean, for me, you've been a personal asset in my life. You know, a few years back when I was totally lost, you know, I don't know how I reached out to you, but you picked up the phone. You were kind of like one of those important lifelines in my life that pointed me or helped me find my gift. So, you know, here's me giving back, and I hope there's going to be some huge value about what we're about to say.
Yeah, look, and you know, hats off to you, Troy, because I think, you know, when you know, there's that lovely quote, you know, when the student's ready, the teacher appears, and often it's not, you know, it's a teacher on a podcast, it's a billboard, it's a quote you read in a book, but you know, you actively decided to look for an answer. You know, you weren't fulfilled and satisfied in what you were doing, and you said, you know, and most people, Troy, most people would do nothing. You know, most people would suffer from, you know, plum disease, you know, PLOM, poor little old me. But, you know, you got on the front foot and you said, no, I'm going to go out and seek answers. So I'm glad we connected, and it's always been a delight chatting with you.
One thing that's absolutely has been critical and crucial in my life is learning how to ask better questions. And for those out there who don't know who Keith Abraham is, I know you've been around or more than 23 countries. You've been doing the professional speaking circuit for 20 plus years. And to date, you've been working with like 260 and counting companies. So for those who had a couple of questions for Keith, now give us a bit of input in what you do.
Yeah, look, you know, I've 21 years have been a professional speaker. I've written 5 best-selling books, you know, published in 12 different languages. I'm big in Russia. You know, we sold 20,000 books in a day in Russia. Now, I've never been to Russia. I don't have any connections in Russia. But you know, somebody, it was thin threads, Troy. You know, somebody took my book overseas, stood up at an event where there was 1,000 people and said, this is the best goal-setting book I've ever read in my life. And all of a sudden I just started getting all these inquiries, and Russia was one of them. And so that, you know, that's pretty cool. But, you know, you're right, you know, 260 plus companies. I think one of the things that I'm most proud of in my business is that we've helped people set more than 14 million goals around the world. And from a professional point of view, I mean, that's a wonderful thing from a personal point of view. From a professional point of view, you know, I have, you know, 90, you know, 6% of our clients use us the second time. We have 64% of our clients have used us, you know, for 5 or 6 times. And we've got something like about 32% of our clients that have used us every year for 10 plus years. You know, Toyota has used us for more than 14, 15 years now. And so I just always think, you know, the true measure of anything you do personally or professionally in particular, is that if people are happy to refer you, and if people are happy to have you return. And I reckon that's a real measure of a great business.
That's a huge measure, return clientele. And people, for me, I know I'm always constantly reaching out to people, and your name is always top of my list because it's a true measure of the value that you offer.
Well, thank you. You know, I'm just fortunate. I get to do exactly what I love to do, and to be able to help people on that journey, you know, on their journeys, which is, you know, just really cool. And it's wonderful to hear, you know, as we were chatting before we went to the recording, you know, just the difference a few words that I said to you has made in your life. And you know, you don't say them at the time to say, oh, this is going to change your life. You know, you say them because it comes from your heart, and you just like intuitively you think, you know, maybe this is what this person may need to hear, and it just comes out. And like anything, you know, if you weren't ready, you wouldn't respond. But you've definitely been ready. As a lot of people who's listening to this podcast right now, they're looking for an answer. They're looking to say, how do I explore my gift? How do I take what I think is my gift and actually, turn it into something, that I'm passionate about, or that I want to give back, or that I want to, be able to, voice this, share this with people.
Yeah, right there, you said 3 critical words. Actually, I was going to ask you next. And let's say I'm someone who believes that I do have a gift. There's some sort of inkling inside. I'm not quite sure. How do I realize that? Like when because you're all about passion. The main word that sits out for me is passion. How do I know? How do I connect with my passion when I'm most passionate?
Yeah, look, a lot of people ask me that question. They go, I just don't know what I'm passionate about. And my response is normally, yes, you do. You just haven't thought about it for long enough, or you haven't been brave enough to take that first step, or be brave enough for 5 minutes longer. Sometimes you just got to hold your resolve. And, I often ask people, there's 12 questions that people can ask to find their passion. And if your listeners want to send me an email to, Keith at keithabraham.com.au, I'm happy to share those 12 questions with them. But the real challenge for a lot of people is to give themselves permission to actually pursue that passion. So once they've identified it, what's something that energizes, and the real measure of passion, Troy, is if you said to me you could never ever use the word passion ever again, too easy. I mean, I don't have to ever use the word passion ever again. Energy. What energizes me? What soothes me? What engages me? What consumes my time? What do I consume my time that might consume an hour of my time, but it feels like a minute? That is probably what you're passionate about. And then it's being brave enough to take that first step to explore that, to say, I think I've got a gift in this area. Great. Who else has got a similar gift? Let me go and watch them, be mentored by them, seek them out, find out how they've turned their passion into a profession, or turn their gift into something that is a tangible product that they can either give away for free or to give away for a fee. And then explore that, and then make a decision. And at no stage have we said, quit your job, move to the beach, to the bush. At no stage have we done that. You want to test it. You want to test it as you go through it, and then because sometimes a passion is not about turning into a profession. Sometimes it's just about doing it because you love to do it.
It's perfect. For me, I become aware that I had a passion inside. I then went to sort of stage 2, if you like what you just said, and I was beginning to be brave. But then I come up against a whole lot of resistance within. And I missed the step. You wish I'd have talked to you earlier where you said test. I went and quit my job because I thought this was just it. It was instantly going to take off for me. But then I hit resistance. It was like my circle of influence, if you like, my friends and family, they didn't get this new direction. So I knew in the moments where time stood still for me, but how do I deal with that resistance of making such a dramatic change in my life?
Well, one of the things there is that you should never rely on the endorsement of others or the encouragement of others. And I know it sounds negative, but if you have to rely on the endorsement of others and the response of others, then I would question how much resolve you have to do it. Because one of the things I often talk about is nothing great happens until somebody becomes passionate about something. And in essence, nothing great happens until you take the first step. So Edmund Hillary had a great quote. He said, "It's not the mountain we conquer, it's ourselves." And I think the only person that's going to stop you from pursuing your passion is you. The only person that's going to stop you pursuing your gift is you. It's never the government. My friends don't think it's a good idea. It's you. And so if you believe it is of value and it's your calling and it's what you're supposed to do, then you go and explore it. I'm not saying pursue it yet. I'm saying explore it. As you explore the possibilities, could I turn it into a profession? Could I turn it into into something I'd like to do? It's one of those things that you just stop and you just start to think a little bit about what you could do, to next, and then what do you do after that? And that's the challenge lots of people have, is they just don't take that first step, and they beat themselves up before they ever get started. They discount it before they ever get started.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've explored it. Well, not explored. I've tried a new option in life, focusing on the end result, the money or the connections I might make out of my new direction, and I've given up because I didn't have the resolve. I didn't know the why and the depth, if you like. But that word that you said, explore, if I could highlight that word and say, as you're exploring this new direction and finding your passion, you must look within and kind of focus on what you're building along the way, because that's a huge parcel of gold that I missed out on in the early years. I was always focused on an end result and forgot that, wow, I was rewriting the rules from within. I didn't need an external factor to give me permission, as you said. So I think it's a huge word, is to explore not only what's unfolding outside, but what's growing inside, if you like.
Yeah, I think it's this piece of you stick your toe in the water, and you test your thought or your concept, or But I think also what seems like a good idea in your head, when you really go and pursue it, all of a sudden you go, it's not quite it. So you have to test it. You have to explore it. You have to sample the water and just take that initiative. But I think lots of people, the other thing as well, Troy, is lots of people as well are looking for perfection. They're looking to start and for it to be perfect from day one. And one of the quotes I use in my focus book is that a good plan started today is better than a perfect plan started tomorrow. Your goal is not to get it right. Your goal is to get it going, and then you can get it right. And so often people are looking for it to be perfect from day one, and it's never going to be that.
That's gold. I'm actually just taking a quick note to get it going. For me, getting it going, I have up on the wall in front of me, if I'm passionate about something in my private life, I used to segregate my private life to my work life. I thought I had a gift and a calling outside, but the work environment that I was in was toxic. I was disengaged at work all day, every day, and I'd become alive on the weekend. My whole life, I'd sell myself short for 5 days to live for 2. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Now I look back, throwing away whatever percentage of my life, 5 days out of 7. But for me, if I could go back now and change one thing, it would be this: find out what I'm passionate about in my private life, and then see how my work offers me opportunities to grow these passions. And you just said to get it going. That's one crucial element that I wish I could change, actually.
Well, look, you got to understand passion fits into 2 categories. There are things in your life that you're passionate about and you go and earn an income from it. Or you go and earn an income so you can go and pursue the things you're passionate about. And I think that in today's society, we've gotten a little confused with, I have to go and pursue my passion and turn it into a profession. And I just want to give people the option. Sometimes it's like, I just go and make money from this work that I do. It's not terrible. It's not great. It's something that I enjoy. But this is what I'm really passionate about, and I go and pursue that. And I think you've got to give people options, because people's lives are made up of four components. There are things in your life you love to do. There are things in your life that you like to do. There are things in your life that you have to do, and there's things in your life that you hate to do. And the challenge with a lot of people, Troy, is that their life is totally consumed by the things they have to do and hate to do. Yeah. And if I can give you a highly technical term, when your life is full of activities that you have to do and hate to do, it is crappy.
Yeah.
And so so people are going to go and find the joy. They've got to go and find what excites them and what gives them joy, not what they endure. And too often we're just enduring those activities. We're just getting through them. And people say, "Oh, well, you travel a lot with the work that I do." But and you know what, travel is. For me, I love to travel overseas. Some of the domestic travel I do, it's like getting on a bus and going into the city. But what I often say to people is, but that just comes with the territory. I know that I have to do that to do the things that I really love to do. So you suck it up and you do the uncomfortable and inconvenient because you're going to be able to go and do the things that excite you and that you are enthused about. So I think that's once again people are looking for the perfection side of things. Nothing's ever going to be totally perfect.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah. When you say have to do and hate to do, first thing that comes to my mind is I thought I had to do something according to others. Everyone around me is doing a certain thing to fund a certain thing and live a certain lifestyle, which inevitably made me hate to have to do it. So could you just clarify that, what you have to do and hate to do? Is that according to who?
Oh, yourself. If it's not giving you joy, I mean, I'm a realist. I just think your life, there are things that you're going to love to do, like to do. And there's things you have to do and hate to do. But you want to make sure the things you hate to do are at the absolute minimal. A number of years ago, I just let go of a whole stack of things in my business that I hated doing. And at the time I thought I had to do them. And then all of a sudden I realised, I'll give you the example. I often say to people, you've got to stop doing the $25 hour jobs so you can go and do the $250 hour jobs or the $2,500 hour jobs. But a lot of people get stuck. I had some financial planners in a room that I was doing some work with, and we were talking about, the things they need to let go of in their business. So this is a group of people that also said to me they didn't have enough time to prospect or make sales calls. And I said to this one guy, I said, well, what do you do, in your day or in your week or in your month? He said, oh, well, I do this and this and this. And he said, I also do my own BAS, I go, your business activity statement.
Yep. Tax.
And I said, sorry, is that for therapeutic reasons or, why are you doing that? Oh, well, I said, you can employ a bookkeeper for $65 an hour that'll do it in half the amount of time that you're doing it. And that would give you back 2 hours, in a week or a month or whatever that you go and, play with your kids or make some more calls or visit some more clients or prepare for the next month or whatever it might be. And so I think it's got to be your own definition of why do I have to do this? Can I outsource it? Can I, can I stop doing it? What would happen if I stopped doing it? Truly, what would happen? Would it really make a difference in a week's time or a month's time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess if what you hate to do is not bringing you value or bringing you a step closer to what you love to do, then I guess you shouldn't be doing it.
Correct.
Yeah. So a great word you said before was intuition. We're talking about what we have to and what we hate to do. Something that I never knew anything about was intuition. That little inner guidance, that little compass that points you in the directions of the things that give you energy, like you mentioned before. And I know you being a professional speaker for 21 plus years, you've definitely found your voice and continue to find your voice. How is it in the beginning that you found or went off on a path to begin to explore what Keith was really capable of?
Well, I think that's something you creep up on, because once again you test those things. Like when I first made the decision that I was going to go out and be a professional speaker, before that ever happened, I'd gone and spoken. I spoke at a couple of conferences for clients and people that I knew and who paid me a fee. And my thinking was at the time, what's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that happens is, if I left my job and did this full time, what would be the worst thing that happened? Well, I'm just going to get a real job. I go back into and work for somebody. But I think you just, you have to back yourself, and you have to, take that first step and see what unfolds. And look, the universe has a wonderful way of providing you with the right opportunities if you're on the right pathway.
Absolutely. And another key thing right there is if you have a crack at what you think is your calling or something that you're gifted at, and you don't succeed straight away, don't be surprised. Maybe you do have to go back to another job, but that could also be a door, and it was for me. It was a doorway to actually where I was supposed to end up. So the failure actually might be part of the exploring that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, look, I think, one of the things there, Troy, is that often people, they're just not looking for, they're looking for it to be this utopia from day one. It's not. I remember in the first year of doing business, our income was inconsistent. I remember in our first year of doing business, I had a client that owed us about $10,000. And I've been doing this for 21 years, so this is still back in the days of checks, no electronic transfer. And they owed us this money, and they mucked around. Oh, look, we've lost the invoice. Can you resend the invoice? And there was another 30 days, and it was coming up to Easter, and I went and knocked on the door. I said, look, you've got to pay this invoice. And they gave us a check. But they gave us a check on Thursday afternoon before Good Friday. And
which is a holiday.
Which is a holiday. And so, it wasn't going to get cleared until, the following week. And I remember, Christine and I, we lived for that whole Easter, 4-day Easter break. We lived out of my change jar. We went nowhere. We did nothing. We didn't even drive the car, and because money was tight. But, I look back upon that now, and tell you what that did. It was a great learning lesson. The great learning lesson was, because we started the business not with a whole stack of reserve cash behind us or anything like that. We started the business going, well, I think this is the right thing to do. This is something that would be, this is something that would be for us to do. And, I'm so glad we had that experience, because what I then said to Kristen, I said, never again. Never again are we going to have somebody that does this. Never again are we going to be in this situation, and touch wood, we've never been in that situation ever again. And the thing that I sacked that client, because all of a sudden I realized that, if they're going to dick us around like that, well, then they don't fit the profile of a client for us. And they were one of the first clients that we ever sacked.
Phenomenal. That's really important. What I was saying before is, to me, that's something you've built inside. Like what seemed like adversity in the beginning will actually gave you a bit of strength, to one, sack a client, then two, pursue the money, then make a really, really strong decision at the back end of it. So for me, when I used to live in my head and be full of anxiety and fear everything, once I started being with the moments and living out of the change jar, as you talked about, and really taking that on board and kind of taking stock of what I was building, it's a whole different shift in life. So that's a huge story that you've just shared there.
Yeah, that was 20 years ago. We were young and didn't probably have a great video head on us and stuff like that. But the business head on us. If you look back upon it as a video, you can see the mistakes. But at the time, you're in it, and you don't see those mistakes. Look, what it did for us is it just got us very, very clear on who, what was what's
I lost you there, Keith. You there? Are you there?
Hello? Yeah, I am. Yep.
Yeah,
Did you
that's
get
right.
all that?
No, I got
Yeah.
I can. Did you drop out? You still there now?
Oh, yeah, I am. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
absolutely, I am.
I'll just cut the middle bit out. I don't know what happened there, but if we could just pick up or something, I think you were saying something like it made you get very clear.
Yeah, look, it made us get very, very clear on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
Yeah,
You know, around clients. You know, what would we accept? What would we tolerate? What wouldn't we tolerate? So yeah, it was a great learning experience.
So one of the biggest things for me in my life that flipped the switch, if you like, that made me, stop running away from something and really thinking about running towards something was how I can impact others. How what I do, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, in the local surf club where I coach and train lifesavers there, how once I started shifting the focus on how I can impact others, my world kind of opened up. So how does Keith impact others?
Oh, for me, mate, it's inspiring people to live a passionate life through the presentations I deliver, the audio programs I produce, the videos I share online, the presentations I deliver, the books that I write. So they're the areas that I know that I can have an impact in sharing my knowledge and the things that I've learnt along the way. And I think, the other piece of the puzzle, which is probably not spoken enough of, is for me to be the living example, not the talking example. And making sure that when people meet me or listen to me, they go, they can see the authenticity. That's the feedback we get from people, is that I'm real, that I'm not, it's just not a headline. It's, people can see what I do and they can hear it in my voice and that, that's really important for me, to be genuine and authentic. The greatest compliment I can be given is when I hear from people like yourself or people 2 or 3 years down the track who say, "Oh, I listened to your presentation. I went away and I wrote out my list of 100 goals, and can I tell you I've achieved, 40 of those 100 goals or 50 of those 100 goals." I mean, that's the stuff that juices me up.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that really warms my heart, that makes my heart sing. I love getting the opportunity to do the work that I do. I'm exceptionally well remunerated for that, but I truly get a great buzz when I hear those stories from people. And in me, one of my big drivers is making a difference in people's lives. And when I hear that, it just that's what happens.
So how do you do that? How do you work with people? I mean, you just explained the platforms, the books and the speaking and the coaching and the private sessions. How do you dig into somebody's soul? Is it purely by you acting, as you act, or how does it work?
I think I think you got to be the living example, and in being a living example, you get a lot more intuitive. You get a lot more focused on on the message that you deliver or the pathway you're on. And in doing that, when people come and talk to you, you sort of know. Well, I sort of know, what's the right thing to say to them, and rather than being prescriptive, this is step 1 and this step 2, you just tune into people, you just connect with people, and in connecting with people, you all of a sudden can know, oh wow, this gal is where I was. I've walked this pathway before. I've seen this before. And, I've spoken to more than 1.5 million people around the world. I get a chance to meet lots of people. And when you start talking to people, you can hear it in their voice. You can see it in their body language, the pain or the suffering or the challenges they've had to face or the triumphs they've had. And that gives you a greater perception around, what's the right piece of advice to share with them. But most of the time for me, it's just being intuitive enough to say, what is this, what's the best message for this person at this time?
Right. Definitely. I just wrote down it's huge. I get a huge intuitive feeling as you talked about intuition, that what Keith does and of course what the Gift podcast does is get people to ask one question. And I guess that question would be something like, what do I stand for?
Yes.
So if
there's that lovely quote, Troy, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Right. Yep. So as you explore that, you start to develop a set of skills and gifts and abilities where what you stand for actually starts to make sense.
Yeah.
Then you start to get a bit of desire about you sharing that or spreading that or growing that. And then you get a little bit of belief mixed in, which impacted my life. I can't even explain how.
Yeah. I think that's the piece that people often don't, they just don't explore it, mate. They live such a superficial, life. They just don't dig enough or delve enough or explore enough. Just like go, okay, well, what is it that I need to, what is it that I need to pursue? And just by doing that, that's when you really start to learn who you are and what you stand for. What's important, what matters, and what makes a difference to you.
Yes, absolutely. So let's say what you said before is when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yes.
I'm a believer that things happen for a reason. So whoever is listening to this right now with Keith Abraham's voice, what's 3 of the most powerful ways that you found or would guide somebody to finding their individual voice? Is it reading or mentors, speaking? What is it that worked for you?
Well, I reckon the first thing you've got to do is understand what you're passionate about, because that's most likely going to be your voice. Because people want to share their passion. And if you don't know what your passion is, well, send me the email and I'll send you the 12 questions. The second thing is to go and explore. So to go and take those first couple of steps and put your toe in the water and say, is this something I want to do as a professional, or is this something I want to do as a part-time, or is this something I want to practice? And then the third thing to do is then really just to assess, once you've gone through that experience, is go and connect with some people who are doing what you want to do, and see how they're doing it. There's that lovely saying, you got to sit at the feet of a master. So go and humble yourself enough to sit at the feet of a master and ask him to show you, teach you, help you. And in doing that, you then have this opportunity to then be equipped to make a decision and make a decision. I think that's one of the big challenges lots of people don't do, is they don't make a decision.
Yes. That definitely changed my life. If those 3 simple steps right there, finding your passion, go and explore your passion, and then connect with people that can help you with your passion. It's like rinse and repeat. That sounds so simple. That sounds so powerful now for me, looking at that. But before, when I first started my whole journey, that's too simple. I'm not even going to go near it. But if you could just rinse and repeat those 3 critical steps right there, I think life would have a whole new meaning. Yeah.
The great rugby captain for Australia, a guy called John Eales, who's a wonderful leader of people, had a lovely saying. He said, you want to take the complex and make it simple, and then you want to take the simple and make it compelling. And I think too often is people discount or disregard advice because they think it's too simple. And I'm a simple guy. I just think that unless it's a simple approach, people won't do it. It's too complex. I have to sit down. I have to go and have a strategic planning day. I have to allocate, 3 hours in my diary to get my head around it. No, I always think that, when it's simple, when it's that piece of the puzzle that is simple, and then the simplicity is, this simplicity then becomes compelling. I can do this. I could do that. I could take the first step. I could go and pursue that. I could go and find somebody. And it's that compellingness, that's when you get people to start taking the first step towards what they want and moving away from what they don't want.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting out of your own way for me. I used to think everything was complex. Like you say, you'd have to, schedule 3 hours into your diary. You'd have to meet with 4 people.
Yeah.
But by getting out of my own way and saying, hey, this is so simple, let's shut my mind down for a minute and actually having a crack at this, things unfold.
They do. And with greater clarity comes more confidence. And with confidence comes certainty. And with certainty comes a higher degree of personal and professional consistency.
And huge value to others. Like a byproduct. So if Keith could work with one person where he could be a student to and also a teacher for, who would that one person be for you? The ultimate.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a great question. I would love to. I'd love to spend a bit of time with Richard Branson. I think I would welcome the opportunity. He just, he's entrepreneurial. He's really on the cutting edge. But in saying all that, he's quite humble. It hasn't gone to his head. He's this, multi-billionaire, and yet, he just seems like an everyday guy. And I've read a couple of his books, and he'd be a neat guy to hang out with.
He would.
And to learn from. And I thought, I always have mentors and coaches. I've got mentors in my life to help me with my presentation skills. I've got business mentors in my life to help me, grow my business and shift my thinking. I think the real what I've noticed is the majority of people can't get their head around the ability to network or to go to work with mentors. They think they have to have all the answers to themselves. And I know I said it before, is that when you humble yourself enough to sit at the feet of a master and say, show me, teach me, help me, you grow to another level. You grow mentally. And I just think if you grow mentally, you grow physically. And you have to go there mentally before you go there physically. And that's what a mentor and a coach does. It's not that they're giving you answers. It's what they're doing is they're presenting perspective.
Yeah, I'm just replaying that in my mind. For someone who was trapped in his head for at least a couple of hard years, if that was, that's the one thing that kind of scraped me through in the beginning is humbling myself, or at least having the authenticity to share where I was at openly with a mentor. And one by one, that mentor gave me a little unique perspective, which lifted me and elevated me to a whole new level. You included, changed my life. So what you say, I'd implore people to go back and re-listen to exactly what you just said right there.
Yeah, thank you.
Amazing.
I think, yeah.
So where does Keith...
You go, mate.
Sorry, where does Keith feel... Couple more questions. Where does Keith feel most alive in life? You talked about energy. Like, if I know where's my, I guess, home base in life, it's for me training people at the surf club, or it's when I'm surfing. That's when I'm so alive. So where does Keith feel most alive?
Yeah, that's a good question. Look, I feel most alive. There's a number of areas I feel most alive. I feel most alive when I'm standing in front of an audience and I know that they just got it. I can stand in front of an audience and they don't get it, and it doesn't have the same impact on me. But I know that I've said something, and you can just see people's heads and their mind going, yeah, that's it.
Exactly what I'm doing right now.
I feel most alive in that. I feel most alive as well when my two girls have asked me for advice or have shared with me a challenge or that they're going through, and I can share some wisdom. And I feel really alive when that happens, because I sort of go, this is what I'm put on this planet to do, to, raise these two, beautiful, young, confident, competent, passionate women who are confident and competent enough that they believe in themselves enough to go and pursue their passion. So I feel very alive when that, and I have a beautiful relationship with my wife, and we've been married for 25 years. We've been business partners for 21 of those 25 years, and I feel alive when her and I are pursuing our common goals together.
And it's okay. Keith, you are the living proof of what the Gift podcast is all about. Someone who is willing and able to stand up for an individual message and explore or even how far you can take Keith in this lifetime, without the worry and fear now of other people. So that's an amazing thing, is finding your individuality in this sometimes chaotic world.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, and a lot of people get lost, in that whole process. They lose themselves, they lose their identity. They just get, they get sucked into this vortex of life, and all of a sudden, a day becomes a week becomes a month becomes 6 months, and 6 months becomes a year, and 5 years becomes 10, and they go, what happened? What happened? I just wrote a blog about this recently, and I was in the States last week, and I was in Denver. My cousins who live in Denver took me to this place called Freddy's, and Freddy's is a burger place. And Freddie started this business with his sons when he was in his 70s. He'd already had a successful career, and he started this burger joint. Well, if the States needs another burger joint, they don't need another burger joint. There's 400 different multi-franchised burger places in the US. So here is something that was started in 2011, I think, 2011, with one business. Well, today they got 250 stores throughout North America, and he's a guy that started that business in his 70s, and one of the hold on tick. One of the things there is that, I just think it's never too late to start. If he can go and build a business in his 70s, he's now in his 85 or 89 or something like that. What can you and I do at our age?
Yeah, wow.
And it's never too late. Never too late to start. And the other thing, though, mate, that he's taken this thing that has been done to death.
Yeah, exactly.
Hamburgers. And built an edge on it, and I got to say, I went and sampled the burgers. The burgers are fantastic, it's never too late.
Big shout out to Freddy's Burgers in the States.
Freddy's
check it out.
Burgers in the States, fantastic burgers. And they're not. It's it's fast food, but it's you order it, they make it. You go and get your drink, and you sit down and you chat for a couple of minutes, and they call order number 77. Bang. That's how quick it is, and It's fresh and it's hot and it's fabulous.
A really cool thing to highlight there is for me when I work with people is to say, you'll actually truly never know the reach or the impact you'll have on every single person's life. Like here we are talking about somebody who started a business in their 70th year, Freddy's Burgers, who primarily serves burgers to people. But you just shared a story with me which inspired me to continue on my path. Like over there, there's a burger joint. Over here, here's me. And I now have passion within to go and explore, so that's the key. You're never gonna know how far of an impact you'll have.
Oh, absolutely, mate. You definitely don't. I mean, like the thing there, mate, is I could have went there, had a burger, and had a chat and enjoyed the time with my cousins before I went on to one of my business meetings. But I think when you're open and you're aware, then you see messages everywhere.
Yes. Awareness is what changed my life. Absolutely. So, I mean, to wrap things up now, Keith, where can people reach out to you if they want to find more out about Keith, if they want to get some of your product or programs?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the simplest thing is just to email me. The simplest thing is go to my website, keithabraham.com, and there's product on there, there's books on there, there's audio books on there, and if they want to reach out, they can always send me a message, Keith@keithabraham, and happy to help people on their journey of on where they're going, what they want to do, and how they want to achieve it, and utilize what we've got as a resource to help people do that.
Yeah, so everything we spoke about, all the links and books and websites, I'll be throwing in the show notes so people don't have to rewind this and try and write down and feverishly. But it's been an absolute pleasure, Keith, because I know the last few times we spoke, or the very first time we spoke, you were kind of dragging me out of the depths of darkness. Like I was I was on a mission and didn't know where to go or where to start. So this time for me, it's full circle, and I feel alive. I feel passionate, and hats off to you for doing what you do. So thank you very much for coming on the gift.
Yeah, thank you, Troy. But hats off to you, mate, because you were the one who made a decision. There's lots of people that we give the advice to, as you do, and they just had to take the first step, which is always making a decision. That I want to change. I want to, I want to be better, do better, and have better.
Yeah.
Perfect. And at the end of the day, you just got to get people to make a decision.
Yeah, spot on, Keith. Once again, thank you very much for being on the gift.
Thanks, buddy. Great chatting with you.